Hi teachers, in this video I'm going to take a look at 4 already done assessment options that are available in Into Reading. I'm going to talk about the assessments just as is in this video, and then in the next video I will take a look at modifying and creating your own assessments or even tweaking some of the questions in the assessments that are already created. To get to these, we're going to go to Discover HMH Resources and then select All Resources. To do this, I'm going to select Assessment, and then underneath the Component feature, I'm going to first start with the printables. We're going to look at the printable leveled reader quizzes. Those are typically all multiple choice in a very similar format that you may be used to seeing multiple choice available for students. Notice I can print this one-page assessment. For whatever reason, the leveled reader quiz answer keys are available in their own section, and it's one answer key per assessment. They're not all available in one file. So I would simply find that leveled reader and be able to print and locate that answer key. The selection quizzes are somewhat similar. The printable version, we're going to use the component and come down and select printable selection quizzes. Here I can see an introduction to things. I can see those selection quizzes. I can open and see what it is that is going to be open for students. So again, I have 5 multiple choice, this time filling in the bubble instead of circling a letter. If I want the answer key for all the selection quizzes, that is available in one file. And for whatever reason, I find it easily by searching for answer key once I have selection quizzes selected and putting answer key in quotation marks. When I do this, I find all of the answer keys here at once. Now, before I move on, I do want to show you that those same exact assessments are available for students digitally. So what you can do is you can come up to that component dropdown again after we've unchecked those other options, and you can see I have the interactive selection quizzes as well as the interactive leveled reader quizzes. So let's just take a look at one of those interactive quizzes. I'm going to select Open. And I'm going to see that quiz available for students on my screen. This is something you'd want to assign to students. The benefit of assigning these is it is graded digitally for students. So I can see that the question is over here. Notice there is no passage over here, so students will need to have that passage or text on hand so that they can reference it while they are answering the questions. You'll find all of the information once those are graded in the reports feature that you can review. You'll notice I have an assign button on the right-hand side here for each of these. If I do not see the assign button, I need to come back over to my classes, select my classes, and make sure my classes are attached to the correct curriculum. I'm going to select View Class, Program Settings, and then I can check whichever grade level I want students to have access to there. The same is true for those leveled reader quizzes. They're going to look very similar, and students are going to need the book on hand as well. Now let's take a look at the weekly and module assessments. So selection and reader quizzes are really based on text that students would have read in a small group or you read together in class. The module and weekly assessments are what we would typically consider a cold read. So students are given a short passage that they're doing right then and there in order to assess their understanding of particular skills. These are also available in PDF printable as well as in an interactive format. So I've selected assessment, I'm going to the component, and I'm first going to look for the printable module and the printable weekly assessments. Do keep in mind when you are assigning these for students, these assessments are going to encompass any of the skills that Into Reading is putting for that particular week and module. That may not 100% align with the skills that you want to assess. So do be aware of that as you're going through each of these with students. You'll notice that in this, we have a passage, we have questions about the passage, we have a second passage, we have more questions about the passage, and then we go on to some foundational skills as well as some writing grammar type questions. Notice they always keep the foundational skills and the writing on separate pages, so you don't need to utilize these components in the assessment if you so choose. We're going to go back to our main tab here, and you'll notice that I can find the answer key right here. I actually like to pull up the answer key ahead of time when I'm looking at these assessments because I can quickly see which standards they're addressing with each of those questions. This will help me decide if this assessment is appropriate or I need to tweak things further for my students. At the younger grades, you are going to notice that there are also specific guidelines for administering the weekly assessments for each assessment. This is because some of the weekly assessment needs a teacher prompt for students to answer some of those questions. So they give you directions on what aspects you're specifically reading to students. In this case, at this first grade, I am reading the text aloud to students. And then in the foundational skills, they give you prompts on what you're supposed to be reading as well as for the writing. This is true at the kindergarten level as well, where you'll find specific guidelines for administering those assessments. As students get into the older grade levels, you may not find specific guidelines as the assessment may be a little bit more student driven with them reading the passage themselves and answering questions. Students will also, at the older grade levels, find some short answer on those particular assessments as well. The module assessment that is available is very similar to those printable weekly assessments, but it's a little larger and obviously encompasses all the skills within that module. So let's take a look. We're going to select printable module assessments. I have an introduction here that I can read. You can see I've got my guidelines for administering and then the actual module assessment. So we're going to pull up the guidelines for administering first. Here I can see the passage, another passage, more foundational skills. So now there's 10 items on the foundational skills, more related to the writing as well. I have the module assessment itself as well as that answer key. Again, just like those weekly assessments, I find it very beneficial to pull up those answer keys ahead of time so that I can see specifically what standards Into Reading is saying they're addressing in those questions, but then using my teacher lens to go through those assessments to really make sure that that assessment is assessing what I want students to be able to demonstrate mastery of. What standards have I been working with students on, and what am I really expecting students to show mastery of as it relates to the standards? So those are your module assessments and weekly assessments in the printable form. The virtual form, or that interactive form of the module and weekly assessments, has all of the passage available for students within there. So I'm going to go to the interactive module assessments, and I'm going to select this particular module assessment. So I can see here there are verbal directions available by clicking the play button. It gives me a little overrun. This is just a key to help students understand the different buttons available within the assessment. And then I can see the assessment here. There is a play button.
Follow along as you listen to the article
At the top, and it's actually going to read all of that article to students before they click go to go on to the next part. I now have the question on the right with the read aloud, as well as the passage on the left with that read aloud as well. Students can complete the entire module assessment and weekly assessment online, and the program will obviously do the scoring for you there. If you have any other questions about the selection quizzes, leveled reader quizzes, weekly assessments, or module assessments, don't hesitate to reach out. Do know in the next video, I'm going to talk about customizing those further so that you can tweak them to really assess what it is that you're looking for from students if this is a tool that you choose to use with your students.